Hey everyone, I'm Todd Wayne. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of Paranomaly Podcast, home for all things paranormal supernatural. A Paranomaly is a weekly podcast focusing on the paranormal, supernatural, and metaphysical. Join us for thought-provoking discussions on paranormal phenomena, conspiracies, and all things unexplained as we talk to researchers and investigators about ghosts and hauntings, UFOs and aliens, urban legends, cryptids, and so much more. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and follow to receive notifications when new content from Paranomaly Podcast is made available. You can also visit us at paranomalypodcast.com for more content and information, including all our social links. Thank you again for watching or listening. So grab yourself a drink and a snack. Turn the lights off on the way back. Find yourself a nice comfy spot and enjoy this episode of Paranomaly. Stay with us, folks. Hey everyone, how are we tonight?
Good, great.
Doing good here.
So, all right. So, Eric, thank you so much for coming on the show today. You're a cryptozoologist. Been dealing with Bigfoot for over 40 years, correct?
Yeah, I've been studying the subject for 43 years and actively field investigating and investigating cases, claims for about 27 years now.
So, Eric, what got you into this field of cryptozoology and Bigfoot?
Well, I grew up like most kids do with the fascination for science fiction and monster movies. I was a big fan of the B horror movies, The Day the Earth Stood Still, Godzilla movies, that kind of thing. And when I was about 10 years old, I came home from church on a Sunday afternoon, and my usual Sunday routine was heading up to my parents' bedroom. They had a small 13-inch black and white TV, and this is in 1980, so keep that in mind. We had a little black and white TV, and I come up from church, and I used to watch this Sunday afternoon matinees on a local channel here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and they used to have like werewolves, Dracula, those kinds of movies. And one particular Sunday, I came home and they had a movie on called Legend of Boggy Creek, which was a film made in 1972, filmed in Fouke, Arkansas, and it's supposed to be based on true events that occurred to the people in Fouke, Arkansas, and some of the surrounding communities where they were terrorized and haunted by an upright hair-covered monster, the Boggy Creek Beast, or the Beast of Boggy Creek, whatever you want to call it, the Fouke monster. And that really kind of captivated me to think, here are these people that are actually dealing with a possible real monster. And I started really trying to get involved in learning what I could to see if there was such a thing as the Fouke monster. And another movie came out shortly after that called The Creature from Black Lake, which was filmed in a fictional town called Oil City, but was actually filmed at Caddo Lake in Texas, right across the state line from Fouke. And they were dealing with a bipedal hair-covered creature, a Bigfoot as we know it now. And it just really fascinated me that there's this activity going on in the Gulf Coast, in Arkansas and Texas and some of these other states. So went to my public library and wanted to learn more. Wanted to find out if this was real true or if it was just a fictional monster like some of the other movies that were on this Sunday matinee. And it turns out that there was such a thing as the Fouke monster, and there were creatures being seen and reported around Caddo Lake in Texas. And it fascinated me that maybe there are real live monsters out there. So I began to read newspaper articles, magazines, books. I began just to immerse myself in the subject and learn as much as I could. And while doing so, I was kind of shocked and surprised to find out in my home state here, Pennsylvania, that during that same time as the people in Fouke were experiencing run-ins with the hair-covered creature, people in southwestern Pennsylvania were having similar experiences with the hair-covered creature, sightings, encounters. Some of them were quite in-depth, and some of them were quite terrifying. So that just kind of put me on my pathway to where I am today, studying the phenomenon, learning and educating myself as much as I possibly could, watching all the documentary films, the in search ofs, anything I could find on TV, sightings, the TV show Sightings that was on the Sci-Fi Channel, anything that had to do with Bigfoot or similar topics, I was fascinated by. And I continued to educate myself. When I was 13, I ran into an investigator that lived in my hometown of Greensburg, Pennsylvania, named Stan Gordon. And we hit it off, became fast friends. I'm still very good friends with Stan after, 40 years of being a friend of his. And we investigate cases together. We do lectures together. We've been at countless events together. But he was doing this back in the 1950s, investigating cases of UFOs and haunted houses and strange cryptid creatures. So I kind of just followed in his footsteps, got into the field investigating back in 1996, 97, and I've investigated hundreds of cases over the last 27 years.
Let me ask this question. I'm in Pennsylvania too, Jim as well. Approximately how many sightings are there per year in Pennsylvania? Is Pennsylvania like a big place for Bigfoot?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of activity, and it's hard to pin down a number of how many sightings take place because there are so many Bigfoot investigators now. When I got into this back in 1996, there was a handful of us, maybe 4 or 5, and then I got involved with a group called the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society, which was just starting out, and then we blossomed into over 100 plus members. Began investigating all over the state. We were averaging dozens and dozens of sightings per year coming into the group. And now there are so many researchers and investigators, you can't swing a dead Bigfoot without hitting one. And they're all throughout the state, and they all collect their sightings and reports. So it's hard to gauge how many reports are coming in, but there's so many investigators now that I would imagine we're getting several hundred reports per year in the state. And that probably include the ones that we don't hear about too. So there are probably people having sightings and experiences that aren't reporting it. So I would have to get investigators and researchers all throughout the state.
Now, where would somebody report this type of thing? Let's say I'm out Shawnee National Park here and towards Bedford there, and I see what I believe is a Bigfoot, but I mean, I'm not going to call 911, correct? They're going to think I'm crazy. Who would I contact?
Well, some people do reach out to the police and law enforcement. They don't know what they've seen. It scared them pretty badly. Or some people reach out to the National Park Services, park rangers, park wardens, game wardens. Most of those people don't investigate those or just blow those off as cases of misidentification, them seeing a bear or having a typical wildlife experience with the common wildlife. But for my group, you're welcome to report it to the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society. We've been around since 1999, 98, 99, and we're still functioning today. We still have active members that do investigate. As I mentioned, there's so many other researchers throughout the state. I don't want to get into all of them because there's too many we could spend the whole show talking about that. But if you go on any search engine online or Facebook, I'm sure you'll find a group in Pennsylvania that might be close to you. And I mean, I'm pretty close to you. I'm in Westmoreland County, so I'm only a couple of counties to your west. And you're certainly welcome if anybody in the southwestern part of the state or any part of the state has an experience or a sighting. I'll have a member reach out to you, and we take the report very seriously. We do honor confidentiality of the witness, your name, your contact information, because a lot of people don't want that publicity. They just want to talk to somebody about what they've seen, and they're looking for answers. Maybe you can provide some answers or some clarity as to what they experienced. We almost become like a paranormal therapist, if you will, because people just have that traumatic experience. They want someone to talk to. They want someone to share their experience with. And that's what we're here for, to listen and to try to offer some comfort, maybe some answers, and give them some peace of mind.
And did you say that Southwest Pennsylvania has more activity than Pennsylvania in general, or?
It does, and it historically has, and I think the reason for that is because there's a higher concentration of Bigfoot researchers. Stan Gordon, who I mentioned, he started researching in 1959, and he's made himself quite a name for being one of the prominent premier researchers in the state. And he's from southwestern Pennsylvania. So when there's a UFO sighting, a cryptid sighting, anything paranormal or unusual, people know because of the past 40, 50 years who to go to, who to report to, because he's been all throughout the media, the public eye. He's on all the radio talk shows in the area, the newspapers. I mean, he's like the godfather of the paranormal here in southwestern Pennsylvania. So that's why they report stuff here. But Pennsylvania overall, there's a lot of sightings going on, and in areas where you don't hear a lot about reports, there's probably not a concentration of researchers to investigate them. So people don't know who to go to in their area to report their encounters. So here in southwestern PA, we probably have a higher concentration of reports due to the researchers, being in this area. I mean, you've got Stan, myself. There's several other researchers that have been around. Dr. Paul Johnson, who's retired now, he was a chemistry professor from Duquesne University. He was involved. He took over Stan's group in the 1970s, investigating UFOs and Bigfoot claims, and he was around for a long, long time researching. And he had his name out there. And there's so many other investigators out there that are looking into claims and trying to get to the bottom of this mystery. So, like I mentioned earlier, just joking around, but it is in all seriousness too. You can't swing a dead Bigfoot without having a Bigfoot researcher in this part of the state. There's just dozens upon dozens of them.
Which is good because we need that validation.
It is good, but it really does some bad towards the field too, because you have too many, and they're all stepping on each other. They're trying to vie for the top spot. They're not sharing information. So a lot of these other researchers don't pass on information that could be vital to solving this mystery. And they usually say the more the merrier, but in this case, I think it's overkill. There's so many people that have started up their own little groups and little segments of groups and stuff, and they're just oversaturating the area. And when people go online and see a Bigfoot group, it used to be 2 or 3 researchers or 2 or 3 groups. Now there's dozens of groups. You don't know who to report it to. And when you do report it to that person, you may not get the answers you're looking for. You might not get the investigation that you're hoping for. So sometimes too much of a good thing is too much of a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. And it seems like it has become saturated in pretty much every field. Ufology, paranormal, ghost hunters, cryptozoology in your field, Bigfoot, things like that. It is becoming very saturated.
Yeah, so, it's gotten pretty bad. And that's mainly because of social media. That's really where it took off in 2008, 2009. And everybody's a paranormal investigator now, and everybody is a Bigfoot researcher or UFO researcher. It's oversaturated.
Now, Eric, have you ever seen Bigfoot or what you might believe is Bigfoot?
No, I can't say definitively I've seen a Bigfoot. I've had some pretty interesting experiences in the woods over my 27 years being out there and investigating. Plus, I was in the woods a lot longer than that. And before that, I'm a hunter and outdoorsman. And I love to hike and fish, camp. So I had experience in the outdoors long before I got into field research. And I've had some experiences over the years hearing things that aren't typical wildlife, finding footprints that aren't typical wildlife, deer, bear tracks, human prints, that sort of thing. I've seen some things in the woods that make me question if it was a Bigfoot or not. And what I mean by that is fleeting glimpses of something large and brown running through the brush and the trees that I just catch a glimpse of. It's so fast I couldn't tell you what it was. I've had a couple of experiences like that. I had an experience in Ohio where I saw something in my high beams for a split second stand up from behind 4-foot high brush, and it was about twice as tall as the brush. And I got a bluish white eye shine reflecting back at me. And by the time I realized what I was seeing, or what I thought I was seeing, when I pulled my car back in and put the high beams on that brush, whatever was there was gone. So I've had some really unusual experiences where I can't say for certain what it was, but those make me question, what did I really see?
Yeah,
What
that's
about the I watched a podcast with you last night. You mentioned that and I think you said this happened to you multiple times, where you took a group out to some location and you had rocks thrown at you or stones thrown at you or some kind of event like that.
Yeah, that's happened at a couple different locations. It doesn't happen every time we go out. Most of the time when we go out, it's uneventful. It's a quiet evening, hearing common wildlife, bugs, tree frogs. Nothing exciting happens, but there's rare occasions when something does happen. We've had rocks thrown at us, where it's actually come pretty close to hitting some of the team that's been out with us. Just a little funny story I'll share with you. We had a group go up to central Pennsylvania, up near Clearfield, the Du Bois area, up in a place called Rockton Mountain. And this was back in 2009, 2010. And we were out in the mountain, in the forest, probably a good 1.5 miles, 2 miles from the main road. And we were on a gas well pipeline. And it was about 10:30, 11 o'clock, and rocks just started whizzing out of the woods at us. And you could hear them coming through the leaves and the branches and hitting the ground close to us. And this occurred a couple of times, where the second or third trip we went back up there, one of the team members actually wore a hard hat because he was concerned about getting hit in the head with a rock. And I don't blame him, but I just thought it was interesting that he chose to wear a hard hat in the woods. I've never done that, but it's for his own protection. He was that concerned. But that's happened to us. We've had sticks thrown at us, small rocks the size of maybe a baseball to as large as a softball or even a beach ball has been thrown at us. The incident I mentioned about seeing the whatever it was behind the brush in Ohio, myself and another investigator were at Salt Fork State Park in Ohio. And about 4:30 in the morning, we were at one of the picnic areas that has had sightings repeatedly in the past. And he witnessed a rock about the size of a couch pillow being thrown out of the woods at us and landed at the ground in front of us. Now, I didn't see it. I heard it hit the ground, but he saw it, and it was enough to freak him out, and he took off back to the car. So we've had multiple sizes of rocks thrown at us at different locations and different times.
So a rock the size of a pillow, I mean, that's very anomalous, I mean, I mean, there's hardly any prosaic explanations for something like that, a rock that large, unless you were on like a cliff or something and there was the possibility that one could have, broken loose from a cliff face or something like that. Like that in itself is very anomalous and hard to explain.
Absolutely.
Ronnie has a question down here about how would you go about investigating Bigfoot? Do you go out and offer food? Do you try to call them out? Do you think they may be existing on another plane? She also put here, do they knock on trees and knock them down? Do they bend and arch the trees? These are things I've heard.
The short answer is yes. They do knock on trees. That's a theory that we speculate Bigfoot used to communicate with each other, either to let other people or let other creatures in the woods know that people are there, or to communicate with each other to let each other know where they're at. Kind of like, I'm over here, no, I'm over there kind of thing. So we do believe they knock on trees. They knock them down. Yes, I do believe that they do that. I've never seen a Bigfoot push a tree over, but many people have heard trees fall on windless nights without any kind of weather or reason for a tree to fall. We've seen the trees the following day and they are not dead, rot, or disease where they've fallen, because of being a dead tree. They were fresh live trees, and they were pushed over. So the ones we've seen and ones I've heard were quite large, and it would take some pretty significant strength to push a tree over. I'll share a quick story with you in regards to a tree being pushed down. There had been a sighting on a property in Fayette County in 2009. Two women had seen a large 9-foot tall grayish colored creature in the briar patch just off of the property. And they contacted us that we went to investigate. We got permission to sit out on their property for several nights after that, for actually several weeks. And one night I decided to fry up some bacon in a little makeshift grill that I purchased at Walmart. Had a little fire going, the bacon was cooking. Figured it would put smell into the air, maybe attract something. Well, about 10:30 that night, as there was 3 of us sitting there, just kind of talking quietly, and in the woods, going up their driveway and up to their house. You could see their pole light come on at the garage. They went into the garage door shut, and the pole light remained on. And about 10 minutes after they went inside, the first tree fell. And that was enough to shake us all up. There was no wind. It was a very quiet, calm night. So we kind of looked at each other like, oh, that was weird. And no more than 5 minutes after the first tree fell, the second tree fell. And we looked at each other like, that's not normal. That just 2 trees falling, and the one tree falling, okay, maybe that might have been dry rot, but then 2 trees falling that time frame apart, that was just really odd and unusual. So in answer to your question, Ronnie, yeah, we think they do push over trees. As far as bending trees and arching trees, I've never seen a Bigfoot do that, but a lot of researchers do speculate that they do bend trees and make bows and arches as a marker, a territorial marker. They make tree stackings and things like that. In regards to your question about investigating Bigfoot, we normally don't leave food out. We've tried that before, but we found that too many other animals come in and take the food that we've left, whether it be raccoons or possums or skunks or birds. They can take food pretty easily, even putting them up high in trees. Believe me, we've tried. So we don't put food out anymore because it can attract dangerous animals like bears and coyotes and stuff like that. So we don't put food out anymore. Usually when we go out, we just sit quietly in the woods. Maybe we'll do a couple of knocks or a couple of calls to try to bring them in. But if that's not working, we just kind of sit there quietly and talk amongst ourselves and just act normal. That seems to be the best way to get anything that's...
Now, what if it's, I know, like, you could talk about bears, you can talk about all these different animals. Is it possible, and how much do you think it happens where someone might see a bear? A good example is there was a bear, and I can't remember the state. It used to walk upwards, and then somebody shot it, which is a shame. But it used to walk upwards. Had some kind of accident at one time. Started walking upwards. Could something like that be contributing to all the sightings?
I'm sure it can play a factor into some of the sightings. Misidentifications of bear is probably more common than we think it is or know it is, because as you mentioned, bears do go up on hind legs. They can't walk for short distances. Typically, they're not upright walking for long distances, or even running. And usually when people have seen a Bigfoot, that's probably the first thing that I get told is it wasn't a bear. I know what a bear looks like. I know what a bear looks like when it's standing up. This had long arms hanging down past its knees, or it was running with its arms swinging. And when bears run, they've got those short, stubby legs and forearms that they're going to keep close to their chest when they're moving. So they're not going to be swinging their arms like a person would swing. So I'm sure some of those sightings can be ruled out as misidentifications of bears or other common wildlife. But I'm sure there's a good percentage of people that have seen them that would tell you it was not a bear that I saw, or not a common animal like a deer or coyote. This was more human-like, but it was covered with hair and very, very fast. We get that a lot too.
What other cryptids are in Pennsylvania?
Well, we have a variety of different cryptids here in Pennsylvania that have been seen or reported. We've probably the second most common reported animal is called the thunderbird. And what that is, it's a large bird, either feathered or featherless, usually having like a membrane or a leathery type of skin to it. People equate it to a pterodactyl or a pterosaur, a pterodon, something from the age when these things existed. And they describe these birds as being massive in size, not your typical hawk or turkey buzzard or even bald eagle or maybe a blue heron. These are bigger than that. The wingspans range anywhere from 8 to 20 feet in length. As I mentioned, some are feathered, all black. Some are featherless with a membrane or a leathery skin to them. Large, incredibly large talons. And usually when they're seen, they're not flapping like a normal bird would flap. These things soar, and they soar for great distances before one fell swoop of the wings to keep themselves propelled in the air. And they always seem to be flying, without really making a lot of fuss in the air. They just very graceful and flying very smoothly through the skies before they disappear from sight. I've received several reports of those over the last couple of years in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, and Delmont. I had a guy who was a wildlife biologist. He and his wife were sitting out on their little patio outside their house one evening, and they heard a loud whoosh fly over their home, and they happened to look up, and he said, "I've seen all kinds of birds, but this was not a bird I've ever seen before." He equated the wingspan to be over 14 feet in length, and that's a pretty darn big bird.
Yes.
And he said, it's nothing like I've ever seen. It wasn't a heron. It wasn't a turkey vulture or turkey buzzard. It wasn't a hawk. It wasn't an eagle. This was all black in color, and it just kind of soared out of sight and disappeared. And that's probably the second most common cryptid seen here in the state. Some other, I guess you could put it in the category of cryptids because it's thought to be extinct or non-existent here in Pennsylvania. But the cougars, the eastern mountain lions, people see them quite frequently, and I get reports about them. And the odd one out is the actual black puma or panther that's been seen and reported, especially in southwestern Pennsylvania. It's been seen in the suburbs of Pittsburgh. And even as far east as into Ligonier and Derry and Latrobe, people have seen a very large black cat. And I'm not talking a large house cat. I'm talking a cat that's about anywhere from 6 to 8 feet long with the 3 to 4 foot tail. So it's a big cat that they're seeing. And you can definitely tell the difference when you talk to people about it.
Yeah, that's very interesting. When I was a kid, I could have swore I seen a panther. I was hunting. In fact, it was archery hunting, and I'm like, there's no way I just seen that. But I'm telling you, that's exactly what it looked like.
Yeah, I've talked to law enforcement officers who have told me that they have seen large black panthers on their farm, their family's farm. I've talked to hunters who have said they've seen either the eastern cougar or the mountain lion, and it wasn't a typical house cat. For a few seconds before it disappears, and I've questioned them, are you sure it wasn't a bobcat? Because bobcats are pretty common around here. Nope. It was definitely a cougar. Had a very long tail to it, and it was long in length, and it was that color of a cougar. So yeah, we get some really strange cryptid reports too. I had a retired high school science teacher tell me that he had seen some kind of large, I guess you'd call it a canine, but much larger than a deer, carrying a dead animal in its mouth, and it bounded across the roadway one night while he was driving home in the mountains. He watched this thing bound across the roadway in front of him. He said it was the size of a deer, but it didn't run like a deer. It bounded across the roadway, and it stopped on the side of the road. And he went down and turned around and came back, and it was still there. He could see it in his high beams with his dead animal in its mouth. And he said it looked like a giant dog. a giant canine, but it was the size much larger than a deer. And he had never seen anything like that. And I know we have coyotes and we have large dogs in Pennsylvania, but nothing fitting that description I've ever heard of.
Yeah, and it would make you think that it might be like a rogue gray wolf or something.
It's possible, but we don't have wolves in Pennsylvania unless they're an exotic animal that's escaped.
Yes, very true. Now, let me ask this question. When it comes to evidence of Bigfoot, what do we have to do to rule out something that is very plausible to something that we know isn't Bigfoot at all? Like structures, because they have to live someplace. Is there structures, their feet print types?
Well, the footprints are usually the easiest thing to rule out common wildlife, because you can tell what a human-sized footprint is by the size of the print. Usually they're anywhere from being generous, let's say a male foot from 8 to 9 inches all the way up to maybe at most 13 to 14 inches. And that's being a little generous. But there have been footprints that have been found that resemble human feet that are 18 inches long. And they're found in very remote locations where the investigators out there or somebody's out there and stumbles across it. Why would a hoaxer first of all, how would a hoaxer know that a person is going on a hike in that area unless that person told the other person they were going there? And sometimes they're found in such remote areas that it makes no sense for someone to be out there walking around barefoot. The terrain, it's not a good place to walk around barefoot, especially in the forest when you're dealing with snakes and other kinds of, hazards out there. So some of these footprints that have been found have been 8-9 inches wide, up to 18 inches long, and even though they resemble a human foot, they're not a track, a deer print, a raccoon track. They're much different. As far as the structures go, the structures are a little more difficult to equate them as Bigfoot evidence because, as I mentioned earlier, I don't know of anybody that's ever seen a Bigfoot putting a structure together. So it's all kind of speculation whether Bigfoot do the structures. And you have to look at the trees that are put together and see if there's a root system to them. You have to look and see if the branches are part of the same species of tree, or if they possibly were brought there from another source. If it's suitable or possibly physically able to be put together by a human. Some of these structures that I've seen and other researchers have seen, the branches are large, and I'm not talking just a 1 or 2 inch diameter. These are 4 or 5, 6 inches in diameter that are placed 10 to 15 feet in the air. So it makes no sense as to why a person would do that. But you can't rule out people in those kinds of circumstances. You always have to look and see how the trees got there, if there's a root system, if they're fresh, if they're dead, where they were brought from. There's a lot of factors you can look into as far as tree structures go. If there was snow that caused the tree to fall, water, wind damage, there's so many factors, variables that fall into those tree structures.
Now, I'm going to ask this question. Now, I am a believer in cryptids and Bigfoot, but I also have to stop and think to myself, if there's millions of people, we're heading into 8 billion people in this whole world. Why isn't there more physical? Like you would think that we would find them dead and people would get them. You never know. Someone might, God forbid, shoot one and have it mounted in their house someplace, which is horrible to say. But I'm just kind of looking at that kind of a thing. What if there's millions of people? How comes we're not you're not seeing more evidence?
Well, there's a couple plausible explanations for that. The scientific explanation is several fold. And what I mean by that is we're dealing with a species that's not great in number. When you have a deer population, like here in Pennsylvania, there are millions of deer. There are thousands of bear. Usually when you're hiking in the woods and you're camping or you're hunting, it's very uncommon to come across a dead deer unless you just happen to be in the right place at the right time and it's hunting season, or if you stumble across a deer that just died. Because within 7 to 10 days, any animal that dies in the woods, nature has a tremendous recycling system. What that means is when the animal dies, the forest devours that animal. Small animals come in, porcupines, mice, insects, they devour that animal pretty quickly. And a deer, a bear, anything like that is going to be gone within 7 to 10 days. So there's very little remains. Even the bones are scattered and chewed upon. Small animals, rodents, they eat the marrow, they chew on the bones, they scatter the bones. So finding an intact skeleton is rare to begin with for a deer. And then you're looking at bear, where there's a few thousand of bear in Pennsylvania. I've only come across 2 dead bear twice, and that's because they were hit by vehicles and put on the side of the road by the Game Commission. That's the only time. And I've spent countless hours in the woods. I know a lot of hunters that have very rarely come across dead bear in the woods. It's just something that not happens. So if we have, if Bigfoot do truly exist and there are live species, their numbers aren't the thousands like the bear and the millions like the deer. Their population is probably going to be pretty low, maybe a couple hundred if we're lucky. And they're spread out over such a large area. So finding a dead animal in the woods to begin with is difficult. Imagine when you have less of a species to find in the woods of a Bigfoot. So that's the scientific look at things. Other researchers theorize that Bigfoot are smart enough and intelligent enough that they have their own social structure, much like we do, where they bury their animals. When an animal dies, the other Bigfoot come and they bury their dead. That's one theory. Another theory is that there is somewhere deep in the deepest part of the mountains, the remotest part of the mountains, there is a Bigfoot graveyard where the Bigfoot goes to die, much like an elephant would. And then there is the non-scientific theories that Bigfoot is not a terrestrial animal. It's not a living flesh and blood animal. It comes from another dimension. It comes from, dare say, people believe that it comes from UFOs. So there's a variety of different possibilities, like I said, plausible reasons why we don't find bones, why we don't find fossil remains. And if you think about it logically, the fossil remains that are being found are found in areas where the terrain, the environment is suitable to create fossils. Where Bigfoot lives, those environments are not suitable to find fossil remains. What I mean by that is most of the fossils that are found from prehistoric animals are found in the deserts and very sandy areas, like the Midwest, the deserts and stuff like that in Arizona, where they dig up remains of dinosaurs and whatnot. And those are suitable environments to create fossilized bones, where when you live in the forest, especially in some states that have a high abundance of rainfall, it's not suitable environments to create fossilized bones. So therefore we wouldn't find them in areas where Bigfoot is known to habitate.
Now, getting back to like a extraterrestrial type, I'm not saying, of course, that they're extraterrestrials, but do you think that maybe they might have some kind of a way to cloak themselves? I mean, they could be seen. Let's say you're out walking through the woods, all of a sudden you see a Bigfoot and it notices you and boom, it just disappears. So you're left to say to yourself, Did I just witness that?
Well, there are researchers who speculate that Bigfoot has cloaking abilities. They're able to make themselves invisible. I'm not sure I buy into that fully because I've never seen a Bigfoot A. B, I've never seen a Bigfoot cloak itself or disappear in front of me, but I have talked to witnesses who have made that claim that they've watched a Bigfoot right in front of them vanish. My thinking is, and this is just my thinking, that we're dealing with an upright, hair covered, usually dark brown or black covered creature. Maybe it's so adept to its environment that it can blend in so well that it appears to be disappearing, but it's actually becoming camouflaged with the trees and the forest around it. In other words, if it wants to look like a tree, it stands still motionless and doesn't move and looks like a tree. So someone's seeing a Bigfoot running through the forest, and all of a sudden it stops. It looks like every other tree out there in the forest, and they're not seeing it anymore. And they're scanning the forest, and all they're seeing is trees when that Bigfoot could be standing right there, completely motionless and just blending into its surroundings. That's what I think we're dealing with when people say that it's disappeared. But there are some witnesses that I've talked to over the years that say this thing has been out in the open where it's been there 1 second and gone the next. And is that something that they just imagined? Is it something that they truly saw? I don't know. I wasn't there to see what they saw. All I can do is take their words for it.
So what about, I know there's a lot of people and researchers, including, I think, Les Stroud, Survivor Man, who talk about telepathic experiences in relation to Bigfoot. And there's actually some people, I think his name is Kiwani Lapseritis or something like that, who's making claims that he's actually having like meaningful communication, with them, and like almost spiritual kind of dialogues about spiritual concepts and things through telepathy. Do you run into a lot of people that are other researchers that have experiences like that, or have you ever tried to telepathically reach out in an effort to make a sighting happen? Or
Well, I try to keep an open mind to anything when it comes to Bigfoot because we're dealing with a subject that's pretty taboo to begin with, and we don't have all the answers to. And we're still learning as we go. So I keep an open mind. I've heard other researchers talk about the mind speak or the telepathy that Bigfoot's able to communicate with them. I've never witnessed it. I've never experienced it. Although I've tried it myself. I've been in the woods in situations at night where I've just thought out loud, if you want to call it that, and said, hey, if there is a Bigfoot in these woods, why don't you come up and say hello or make yourself known or do something to convince me that you're here. Talk to me, communicate back with me. And nothing's happened. I haven't had any mind speak or telepathy returned. But I know of other researchers who claim they have conversations with Bigfoot, that claim that they're not animals, they're actually people, very ancient people that have the ability to communicate back and forth with them, not verbally or not wood knocking or whistling or anything like that, not an audible communication, but a silent speaking back and forth through using your mind. I've never seen any proof of it. I've never experienced it myself, so I can't say that it's a legitimate thing, but there are others out there that do think that that's plausible. I've met and worked with over the years a few that I found, I've no reason to think they're crazy or insane. They've seemed pretty rational, level-headed, and they talk about communicating. Maybe they are. I haven't experienced it, but maybe they are truly doing what they say they're doing. Who am I to judge what they're telling me?
have you heard about that person whose name is Kiwani Lapseritis? And have you ever seen any information from him? I mean, to me, he seems like an incredibly sober, grounded, spiritually mature type of person, that just gives no indication, that he's making anything up, and that's just really interesting. He also has said that he documents this himself, that he's run into, I guess, 252 other people that have had telepathic experiences with Bigfoot. I kind of think that if that's real, or even if that stands the chance of being real, these people could be the Rosetta Stone to kind of advancing the understanding. I mean, doesn't it seem like we're kind of stuck? We've been stuck for a long time and not getting anywhere, understanding like, what is it? What is it's doing? We still, debate on whether it exists or not. I kind of feel like these type of people, who might be having these experiences might really kind of advance the field potentially, if it just so happens, that that they are correct and that it's genuine.
My only argument to that is with the number of other researchers in the field, it's not happening to them. It's only happening to a very, very few select people. And I know Kiwani, actually, I had him on my podcast many, many years ago when I was doing podcast shows. Nice guy, and he does seem very genuine. Maybe in his mind, maybe his experiences, he's experiencing that, but I have not. I know many other credible researchers that have been in this field for a long, long time who have not, who have tried. Like I mentioned, I tried it. Nothing happened with me. Nothing has happened with them. So it's more of, it's not the norm. Let's put it that way. It's not the norm for the majority of Bigfoot researchers out there. If it's happening and it's truly happening with other researchers, it's happening in the minority.
Yeah, and I think Kiwani does mention that they're very, very wary of humans in general, and that they kind of have this tendency to maybe be very selective with who they reach out to. So perhaps that's a reason why not very many researchers have had that experience. Maybe
it's a possibility. I can't say that it's a definitive, but it's a possibility. I know there's a lot of researchers who go out there with good intentions, who don't go out there putting out an aggressive type of field research, that are more passive, that are just genuinely good-hearted people. So why aren't they too having experiences like that? Why is it the select few and not the many? Because there are a lot of good researchers involved in this with good hearts, right, good intentions, not out to harm these animals.
Yeah, right.
Now, Courtney had asked down here, she says, what about a dog whistle, since on different frequency? She says, I don't know, but it's thought. So could we
tried everything?
Okay.
Yeah, we've tried dog whistles. We've tried tuning forks. We've tried a variety of different sounds, whether it be just children laughing and playing, because they seem to have a curiosity, attraction to children when children are playing. We've tried a variety of different wildlife sounds, common sounds from radios, music, all types of music to try to entice them. We don't have luck with it. It doesn't mean that it doesn't work. It just means that when we've used it, we've had no success. It seems to be what I get the best responses from, and the most frequent responses is when I'm imitating the calls that we've heard them make. So in other words, if we hear a high-pitched scream or a squeal, we try to imitate that in hopes of getting something to answer. And it doesn't always happen. I would say 90% of the time we don't get answers back, but when we do, we're making calls that sound like what they make, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm sure that you guys have tried like taking a log and beating it off a tree
Mhm.
to try to get that, because that actually goes pretty far. People don't think that, you just hear that knock, but it goes a long way. So that would be something I'd be out there trying.
Yeah, we've done that. We've done, oh goodness, so many different sounds, like I mentioned. Even playing different types of music, whether it be soft jazz, classical, heavy metal, rock, anything we could think of to try to use, we've tried. And even cars backfiring or cars revving their engines up really loud, any kind of sound that's unique and different to try to get some curiosity driven to bring these creatures in, we've tried. A lot of it, like I mentioned, 90-95% of it, we don't have any luck with. But what seems to work out of all that is making the sounds that they make, whether it's being the wood knocking or imitating the calls that they make. We do a primate sounding whoop or howl or a scream. And if we're at the right time, right place, right circumstance where they happen to be in the area, we might get a response. And other times we've been out there just acting ourselves, talking, communicating, laughing, joking around, and we hear a scream that's unsolicited or a wood knock that's unsolicited. So there's really nothing that seems to be a definitive pattern showing this works versus that.
Now, what would Bigfoot eat? I'm kind of curious because I hear many different things. I hear some people would say, well, they're like a bear; they'll eat anything, sweets and whatever else. But I'm kind of curious, since you've been doing this for forever, what would a Bigfoot eat?
They have been equated to be an omnivore, which means they'll eat anything. I call them an opportunist, which means if an animal truly this big does exist, they're going to need a lot of calories to keep that body going. So they're going to be constantly looking for food. And that's not just plants and berries and nuts. We're talking animals. We're talking any kind of fish, any kind of food source they can find. There have been reports of these things diving in dumpsters looking for food, for our leftover garbage, at garbage dumps foraging for food, eating all kinds of aquatic life, whether it be fresh clams or salmon or fish, or they've been seen carrying deer over their shoulder, eating berries and nuts and fruits. That's why we put apples and stuff like that out there when we do put food out in the woods. We did put food out in the woods. They're an opportunist. They have to constantly eat. They need thousands of calories to keep up with that huge body, that massive body that they have. So they're going to always be foraging for food, looking for food. And people say they eat the same diet as a bear. I call them opportunists. They'll eat whatever they can get their hands on.
Are there any sightings anywhere where they have been seen to use tools, or have they ever been seen to carry anything at all, on their body or person?
Tools, no, not necessarily. Although people have seen them carrying sticks, and there's speculation on that. They use that to knock on trees with those branches or sticks. But as far as tools go, I'm not aware of any reports of them carrying any kind of tools, or even fire for that matter. They seem to just have what they have in their fur, and that's really it. Although there have been some strange reports over the years of them supposedly wearing clothing, seen with an old tattered, torn up shirt on or a pair of pants on. I think in those cases, people didn't see a Bigfoot. They just saw like a homeless person or someone that was not very well kept wearing clothing. If these things are truly out there and they're the size that people say they are, then it's going to be hard to find human clothing that's going to fit them. So, but there are those reports that people have seen, claim they've seen them wearing clothing over, not a lot, but a few sparse reports. Tools, I have not heard many reports of them using any kind of tools whatsoever.
So what's like the balance of evidence as far as determining, whether they're sentient or whether they're more animal-like? Like I know you have the relationship with UFO phenomena and other anomalous phenomena that would suggest, even the telepathic experiences, that would suggest that they're very intelligent. And then you have other things like maybe the what's his name, the Robert Moorhead sort of audio tapes, which kind of give the impression that they're maybe more primitive, you know, and they sound kind of more like apes, you know, grunting, you know. What do you think as far as level of intelligence and awareness? And
I think they are very intelligent. I don't think they have a human-like intelligence to them, but I think they're intelligent about the surroundings and their environment. This is their home. That's where they live, so they know everything around them. They know how to hide. They know how to avoid us. They know how to survive. These sightings aren't just something that happened in the 1960s or 70s. These date back hundreds of years. There are documents of newspapers documenting these things around in the 1700s, and there's probably long before that. The Native American tribes have their stories. They've been around for hundreds of years, so they know how to survive. They're intelligent enough to avoid being captured or killed by us. So I think they do have a very high level of intelligence. I don't think they're bordering on a human intelligence where like we are. We use technology. We have social structures. You know, we have civilization. They may have small tribes of them, family tribes, if you want to call them that, to survive, but I don't think they're on that level of intelligence. The Ron Moorhead tapes that you refer to, yeah, it does sound like they have a language, and most animals do have their own language. They communicate with each other. I think in that instance, what he captured, and I know Ron very well, and I'm familiar with those tapes, the Sierra sounds as they're called. They do seem to be communicating with each other, and they do seem to have their own language. It's not something we can decipher, and it's definitely not a human language. Or any kind of like foreign language that we're associated with, but they do have their own communication. They're able to speak with each other and understand each other, and that shows intelligence. Just I don't think on our level, unfortunately.
are the Sierra sounds, is that like an isolated thing, or has that been seen elsewhere? That same kind of type of grunting communication.
They have been recorded communicating in different parts of the country, not on the same scale as the Sierra Sounds were recorded. That was over probably a 4 or 5 year period, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it was a 2 or 3 year period that Ron actually recorded those sounds, but that went on in that area for a long time. And those hunters that would continue to go back to that location heard them there repeatedly. So that was an ongoing thing there. But other researchers have claimed they've heard a language, something speaking to each other. I've heard it myself, and the best way to describe it is something that's mumbling and speaking incoherently. You can't understand what's being said, but you can hear there's a mumbling and almost like it's a grumbling, mumbling mouth full of marbles or rocks talking, trying to talk, but not speaking a language that we would understand. And that's happened a couple different places around the country, but nothing has been documented and recorded like the Ron Moorhead tapes were.
That's very interesting. Courtney had asked, has there been any reported deaths or injuries of humans that could have been from Bigfoot?
Yes, there are a few over the years that have been documented and recorded. Most of them were in the 1920s, like 1924. There was the attack on Ape Canyon where miners in a cabin were attacked by several of these hair-covered creatures. There's the Teddy Roosevelt story about a trapper named Bauman. It's in his book, The Wilderness Hunter, where he wrote about a trapper and his partner that went into a very desolate area to trap beaver. And while they were there, they had a run-in with a hair-covered animal, and his partner shot at the animal several times to scare it away. and they were finally chased out of the valley. And the day that they were leaving, they went to gather their traps up. The partner stayed at the camp while Bauman went and gathered his traps up. And when Bauman returned to the camp to leave with his partner, he found his partner dead with large fang-like marks in his throat and huge human-like footprints all around the body. So there have been documented cases over the years of a Bigfoot attacking or supposedly attacking and killing people. They're very rare, and often they're provoked by the person who ended up getting killed. More or less the experiences and the sightings are docile. In other words, it's just a Bigfoot saw you, you see Bigfoot, and you both go off in different directions. It's not a violent encounter or an aggressive encounter. I do think they can be aggressive, and I think that's because if you provoke them, you shoot at them, you encroach their young, their territory, or their food source, and they see you as a threat like any animal, they're going to defend themselves and defend their young. So I think that's probably what happens when there are aggressive encounters. But for the most part, they've only shown bluff charges, thrown rocks and sticks, and that's to drive people out of their territories. The attacks and the possible killing by a Bigfoot are very, very rare.
Now, we're going to wrap up here shortly, but I have a couple more questions. One was going back to tools that they use. Even I would think that they would have to have something as well. Even primates use sharp rocks to. They use them for, making things softer, food wise, maybe. But you would think that with a Bigfoot being as old, because it's been reported for a long, long time, you would think that they would have more than, even a caveman utilized certain things. Maybe something sharp that could cut through tissue and things like that. Tell us your thoughts on that.
Well, just because we don't see them carrying tools doesn't necessarily mean they don't use them. They could be using tools just on a case where they may have to kill an animal with it, or they may have to cut something open, as you brought up. I can't rule that out. I can't say they don't use tools altogether. I don't know of any cases where they've been seen carrying tools or using tools. So we don't know what they're doing in their natural habitat. We can't observe them. We can't study them. If that were the case, I think we'd have the mystery solved by now. We'd be able to watch and learn their behaviors and habits and everything that they do and where they go and how they can be so elusive. But we can't. We're lucky we have sightings of them. We see them for a few fleeting seconds and they disappear into the forest, or there's a road crossing, or they're watching us curiously from the forest as we're sitting around the campfire, or they're staring in a kitchen window at a housewife washing dishes one night to see what she's doing. Those are just some of the sightings that occur. So we don't have, as far as I'm aware of, we don't have people that have the ability to sit and watch them behave and act and see what they're doing and if they're in fact using tools. You can't rule that out. You can't say definitive they're not, but no one that I'm aware of has ever seen them using a tool to cut open a deer or to dig a hole or to construct a tree structure. That's nothing I'm familiar with, but you can't rule it out.
Right. And that's true. And I love your honesty about it because, we're learning and we're going to continue to learn, but I believe they're learning too. They're going to see us and they're probably just as curious of what we are. So yeah, I believe that it's just an evolutionary thing. Richie B down here, he has a question. What's your theory on rock clacking, repetitive clacking? He says
Well,
that I've recorded of what sounds like an hour of straight rock clacking.
yeah, and other researchers and witnesses have claimed they've heard the rock clacking. That's another common communication um, thought that these things do. I know primates actually do hit rocks together and they communicate that way. So it is a primate behavior that we're aware of. So it is possible that these Bigfoot, if they are truly primates, and I think there's a very good chance they are, that they use this to communicate or maybe to warn people in their area, hey, I'm here, don't come over here, or to let other Bigfoot know that they're there. We don't know why they do it, but it is thought that they do rock clack. There was an episode, and I'm not sure if you've ever seen this or not, but on Unsolved Mystery many, many years ago, there was an episode where a hiker, his name was Skip Frombach, and he was hiking in Oregon on a trail, and he was marking claims, and he came across a Bigfoot sitting on the trail with a big rock, and he was taking that rock and smacking it against another rock. And he saw that, got terrorized, and was chased out of the woods by the Bigfoot. But he actually witnessed a Bigfoot doing the rock clacking, so to speak. So it is possible that they're doing that, maybe to communicate, maybe to scare each other out of the woods, or let each other know where they're at, or scare people off, or warn people. We don't know what it means. And we don't even know if they truly are doing the rock clacking, if it's not something else that's being heard. But yeah, researchers speculate that that's what they're doing. That's one of the forms of communication that they have.
Now, Pennsylvania, I love Pennsylvania. It's a beautiful, beautiful state. A lot of beautiful land, the mountains, things like that. Now, as a cryptozoologist that you are, what would the difference be between Bigfoot in Louisiana? What is it? The Rougarou? Maybe the skunk ape? They're Bigfoot as well, aren't they?
It's all territorial, locations. It's how the creature adapts to the area that they're living in. Here in Pennsylvania, they're called Bigfoot or wild men of the woods. In different areas, they have different names for these creatures, but I believe that they are one and the same, or if not closely related to each other. They're just growing up in different environments. Like, let's say in the South, Bigfoot are thought to be thinner, skinnier, more aggressive, and that might be based on the food source that they have to work with, the terrain. It's hot, it's swampy. They're dealing with a more harsh environment down there than they are in the Pacific Northwest, where it's lush and green and ample food source, and it's easier to survive. So there's a variety of different names are given in different locations. They call it the woolly booger in Texas and some of the southern states. In New Jersey, it's old red eye. The Whitehall monster up in New York. Pennsylvania Bigfoot, of course, and different places, even small towns have different names for these things. Like I mentioned, the Fouke monster at the beginning of the show. It's all based on territory. It's based on where you live, and it's based on what people grow up with in that area.
Yeah, I was just very curious if they were the same thing or not. I've mentioned about the Rougarou once before, and so I said about it being similar to Bigfoot, and was told no, it's not. But I truly believe that it is, and that's why I was asking your input on that.
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with where you live and where you grow up and what the folklore is in that area and the history is. If you really look into it, this is a global phenomenon, not just a North American phenomenon. And so many places have different names for these animals and slightly different descriptions, but I think we're dealing with the same animal here. It may be like we all have cousins and relations in different parts, of the country and the world. Maybe that's what's going on here. It's based on their environment, the terrain where they grew up, and They might all be cousins or distantly related. We just don't have enough information. But I think it's truly one and the same animal, maybe just a different variety of it.
Right. Well, Eric, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. I could probably ask questions all night long. This is a piece of the paranormal that I am trying to get more into. My whole life, I've been dealing with ghosts and trying to find answers to questions that I had when I was a kid. And I also had a few things happen with, which I believe could be UFO involved. So I'm switching now and I'm trying to get more in depth with cryptozoology and UFOs to try to make sense of things that I have seen or experienced. So I thank you so much for being on and being open and honest with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And like any of the other paranormal phenomenon that's going on, you think you might be closing in on an answer, and then the questions change. So I don't have all the answers. I never claim to know everything there is to know. I'm still learning and continually learning, and will probably learn until I'm dead and gone. But it's a fascinating subject. There's so many turns and twists. It's a rabbit hole. Once you start down it, you never know where it's going to lead you, and you never know what it's going to find. And that's what makes it interesting.
Yes. Well, everybody, if you need to reach out and if you think that you see a Bigfoot, we're going to have Eric tell you where you can go ahead and report this to. Go ahead, Eric. Tell them where all that can be turned into if they think that they've seen a Bigfoot, or I'd imagine any crypto in the state of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I run a couple of groups. I run the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society. We're pretty easy to find. Just Google Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society or go to pabigfoot.com. You'll find us. I also run the Pennsylvania Cryptozoology Society, which we look into all cryptids, and that's pacryptosociety.com. Or if you want to reach out to me directly, ericaltman.net. I have my own website, and you can reach out to me privately there and share your experiences. I look into all phenomena, not just cryptids. I look into UFOs and hauntings and everything that I find strange and unusual, I look into.
All right. Well, I thank you so much, sir. It was wonderful talking to you. And I hope to have you on again, talk about some more cryptozoology or UFOs, or we'll get to something.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Eric. Bye-bye now.
Have a good night.
Wow. So, Jim, tell me, what's your thoughts? That was very interesting. I have a lot of questions.
Yeah, I kind of feel like, what if 10, 20 years, 30 years goes by, okay, and we still haven't got the smoking gun, I mean, and being that this is also a global phenomenon, and there's, 8 or 9 billion people on the planet. I just think it's strange that still, at this late date, 2024, we still have not hit pay dirt with this and don't have this nailed down. I just think that eventually, like, if this just forever just keeps being elusive, I think we're going to have to confront that fact and really maybe start to entertain more the mystical, supernatural possibilities with Bigfoot, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree 100%. I think there's more. I don't know. Is there more that can be done, do you believe, to, I don't know, make contact?
I personally think that people should, attempt to make telepathic contact because, again, I think that seems promising. Like, if you could get communication from it, I mean, that could just advance us, worlds, as far as our understanding, I think it's worth a shot. I think telepathy is worth a shot. I don't know what else. Yeah, I'm not really sure beyond that. What more we could possibly do. But yeah, I don't know. Good question. Yeah, I'm not sure.
And we will definitely continue on down that rabbit hole in the future as well. We're going to be having a lot of different people we talk to, and there's going to be so many different twists and turns. You and I will be like, So, yeah. But thank you, Jim, so much for giving us your time. I'm really excited on things to come, especially with the cryptid and UFO topics. I think it's going to be a great thing coming up.
Yeah, I'm excited. Yeah, definitely.
All right, Jim. Well, you have a wonderful evening. Thank you, sir, very much. And I will see you on the next episode of Paranomaly.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Bye now. Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in with us tonight, and we hope you enjoyed this episode. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and follow to receive notifications when new content from Paranomaly Podcasts is made available. If you believe you have something paranormal happening in your home or business, or you believe you may have witnessed a UFO, a UAP, please send us your stories, your photos, videos, questions, suggestions, or comments to paranormalypodcast@gmail.com. You can also visit us at paranormalypodcast.com for more content and information, including all our social media links. Thank you again for watching or listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode, Paranomaly. Thanks, everyone.